But one of the great things I admire about Elon is when he wants something, he really wants it, and he goes and gets it. And it's amazing to watch him do that as his brother, and he's done it throughout his life.
Interesting. Well, I think Kimball is just one of the nicest people I know in the world. I've never in all my life seen Kimball intentionally do a mean thing. So I admire that a great deal. How would I describe myself? Well, I mean, I seem to have a high innate drive, and that's been true even since I was a little kid. You know, I really had a very strong drive. You know, sort of did all sorts of risky things when I was a kid that why did I do those things? They're crazy. So I think that's very helpful. And I care a lot about the truth of things and trying to understand the truth of things. I think that's important. You know, if you're going to come up with some solution, then the truth is really, really important, I think. I try to think of. I mean, it's difficult to obviously come up with things that are praise for oneself, you know, or there's bad and good here, but. I think sometimes they're just the things that seem quite clear and obvious to me, and I don't understand why they aren't so obvious to everyone. You know.
So would you describe yourself as fearless? I mean, are there areas when you seek people for advice, and who would you ask for?
I wouldn't say I'm fearless. In fact, I think I feel fear quite strongly. But if what we're doing is what I'm doing is I think is important enough, then I just override the fear. Mm-hmm. So, but it's not as though I feel it more strongly than I would like.
And in which areas would you never go full risk if you still are fearful?
Well, it really depends on the stakes. If the stakes are high, if it's really important, then I will overcome the fear and just do it anyway. Mm-hmm. But essentially, I mean, drive overrides fear, but I feel the fear. It's kind of annoying. I wish I didn't. Okay. I wish I felt it less. Uh-huh. So, yeah. All these introspective questions are interesting. I don't get asked these very often. And then, I'm trying to think, what is an accurate reply? And some of these, it's hard to evaluate yourself on these things. Mm-hmm. The thought in '95 was that the internet was going to be something really that fundamentally changed humanity. It was like humanity acquiring a nervous system. You know, previously. People would communicate information almost by osmosis relative to how the internet works. If you wanted to have access to a lot of information, you'd go to the Library of Congress. But unless you were physically where the books were, you didn't have access to that information. But with the internet, you could be anywhere in the world, and if you're connected to the internet, you have access to all the world's information. So it was really just humanity was almost becoming like a superorganism with a nervous system. So we want to be part of, building some elements of that. And
it was a funny time because it made so much sense to us, but we literally had a guy throw a Yellow Pages book at us. He was a very senior executive, and tell us, do you ever really think the internet is going to replace this?
Yeah.
And literally, and you're kind of looking at them going, this guy's screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't, and people didn't know what the internet was.
Yeah.
Including in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was like something that universities and like the government used, and nobody was really doing anything on it, and you certainly couldn't make money.
Yeah.
Through the end of '95, where that's essentially we're just sleeping in the office and showering at the YMCA, and then around the end of '95 is when Netscape went public, and then whether or not somebody knew what the internet was, they knew that you could make money on the internet somehow, or even if it's only on the greater fool theory. So when we went and talked to venture capitalists in early '96, there was a much greater interest in what we were doing. In fact, the round closed in like maybe a week or something.
It's crazy. Yeah, we went from sleeping in the office to people throwing, I mean, again, this is a financial crowd, so you guys see these numbers every day, but for us to hear, we'll give you $3 million.
Yeah, it sounded extremely, we thought they were crazy. Like, why would they do that?
It was literally like, these people are insane.
They obviously do not realize we're sleeping in the office.
In fact, when they did fund us, they realized that we were illegal immigrants.
Well, I mean,
yes, we were.
I'd say it's a gray area.
Yeah, yes, we were. We were illegal immigrants. We were sleeping in the office. We didn't have a car. We had one car, but the wheel kept falling off.
But, well, actually, yeah, the wheel did actually fall off the car.
Yes, exactly. And the venture capitalists actually bought us cars.
Yeah, well, they gave us 40 grand.
It was 40 grand to go buy cars, which was, at the time was more money than we'd ever seen.
Yeah, and I bought I spent $35K on a Series 1 67 Jaguar E-Type.
Which didn't drive, but he got what he wanted.
Yeah, it looked really great by the side of the road.
He got it. He was driving it home from the dealer, and it broke down, and he had to actually come to the house on a flatbed truck.
Right, it didn't improve from there. I mean, it was really brutal.
Should have kept the truck.
Yeah.
It reminds me in some ways of, eBay went public in 1998, and we had kind of the scrappy startup mentality as well. And the first time I ever saw Elon on TV was when you took delivery of a McLaren supercar.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So presumably somewhere between sleeping on the floor of the office and the McLaren, something happened.
So at Zip2 we basically created software to help bring the media companies online. So it was sort of internet publishing software. It was the Yellow Pages, White Pages, maps and directions, that kind of thing. And we helped bring some of the major media companies online, or at least a portion of what their online presence was. And so we had as customers and investors New York Times Company, Knight Ridder, Hearst, and most of the major media companies. And then
in fact, the guy that threw the telephone book at us eventually became an investor.
Yeah.
Right. And then the company sold to Compaq for a little over $300 million.
Yeah.
Circa 1999, late 90s.
Yeah, that's right. It was, the deal was sort of struck late 98 and it concluded early 99.
That's the game plan.
Mars.
Yeah. Pay the bills by launching satellites and launching cargo to and from the space station, and in a few years we'll be launching astronauts. So we've got to pay the bills to do that, but then use that money to develop advanced rocket technology, ultimately to be able to take people to Mars. And because I think that's the important thing.
Why do you want to go to Mars?
Well, history is going to fundamentally bifurcate along one of two directions. We're either going to be single planet species until some eventual extinction event, or we will become a multi-planet species and be out there exploring the stars. And I like the second one. We should, I think, aspire to that. And we're kind of on our way there with Apollo, and then we seem to lose our way, and we're trying to restore that as much as possible. This may sound silly, but I read books and talk to people. That's kind of how one learns anything. There's lots of great books out there, and there's lots of smart people, and of course, we've got a team of really really great people at SpaceX and Tesla, and we've got world experts in propulsion, in structural design, avionics, software, launch operations, that kind of thing, and likewise at Tesla. So, if you just talk to the people on your team, you can learn a tremendous amount. And then as you iterate through problems, it's kind of like almost anything. When you struggle with a problem, that's when you understand it. And that's, so once you've done that for 11 years now in the case of SpaceX, or 10 in the case of Tesla, then you have a pretty good grasp of it. In fact, that's one of the ways, when I interview someone to work at the companies, would be to ask them to tell me about the problems that they worked on and how they solved them. And if someone was really the person that solved it, they'll be able to answer multiple levels. They'll be able to go down to the brass tacks. And if they weren't, they'll get stuck. And then you can say, oh, this person was not really the person who solved it, because anyone who struggled hard with a problem never forgets it.
What would have happened if the fourth one hadn't worked?
We would have failed. Yeah.
But let's talk about one of the failures were spectacular. I would go out to the island, Kwajalein with Elon, and seeing giant exploding rockets is quite an amazing sight. And I was one of the early investors in SpaceX, and I said, you know what? If all I get to do is to see these rockets explode, it's well worth every dime I put into this company.
There's something to be said about brotherly support.
But it was an amazing thing to watch what Elon had built with those rockets on a shoestring in the middle of nowhere, and literally the middle of the Pacific, 2,000 miles from Hawaii. That experience, we'd fly in these what are they called? What are those?
Hueys?
Helicopters? Hueys. You're flying the Hueys. You feel like you're right out of Apocalypse Now, flying to Dr. Evil's island. Really amazing. And again, worth every penny, still to this day, I'd say. So I think the failures were actually unbelievably exciting to be part of.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elon.
You're welcome.
How long do you think it's going to take for self-driving cars to become mainstream in U.S., in China, and other parts of the world?
Sure. First of all, let me preface this by just saying that with something where there's an enormous industrial base like cars, anything that happens en masse is going to take time. So there's about 2 billion cars and trucks on the road. Global capacity production capacity is about 100 million cars and trucks a year. So let's say tomorrow we had self-driving cars that work perfectly. It would still take a long time to switch out the massive industrial base. It would take 20 years if there was the same number of cars and trucks. There's probably some smaller number of cars and trucks and things are autonomous, but it will still take a while. So I think, but to answer the question, say where do I think the first production self-driving car will exist that people can buy? It's probably, in terms of the technology working, I think we're no more than 5 years away from having cars that are way safer than humans.
Yeah, but for mainstream adoption, there needs to be laws and government support.
Sure. That's why I said from a technology standpoint.
Right.
So, from the point at which you have the technology working, then you have to convince the regulators that it's truly safe. So you'd be effectively running a large fleet of cars in shadow mode, where there's still human driving. And you evaluate what the narrow AI on the car was doing compared to the human actions, and then you'll be able to statistically prove that the narrow AI on the car would have been safer than the person. And it's going to take at least 2 or 3 years. So from the point at which it actually works, I would expect that there'd be some delay in the regulatory approval of at least 2 or 3 years.